the conscious universe, as Donald has said in his introduction, everything in the universe, throughout all its kingdoms, is conscious, i.e. endowed with a consciousness of its own kind, on its own plane of perception. HPB says, we men, meaning women as well, must remember that because we do not perceive any signs which we can recognise of consciousness, say in stones, we have no right to say that no consciousness exists there. There is no such thing as either dead or blind matter, as there is no blind or unconscious law. These find no place among the conceptions of occult philosophy. The latter never stops at surface appearances, and for it the noumenal essences have more reality than their objective counterparts. And the quote for this is actually on page 31 of Ianthe Hoskin's Foundations of Esoteric Philosophy. But this not having consciousness because we can't perceive it, then as Theosophists we already know that. Take HPB's comments about stones, and I would think that many of you here get a feeling, a vibration, or even feel a Davic or angelic presence from a crystal. I bet most of you have got sort of crystals that you're really fond of back at your houses, your homes. But something like even a pebble or a piece of limestone, I mean, look at the fossil in it. I mean, they're amazing things. And just to think that they're hundreds of millions of years old. And these crystals, I mean, they almost hum sometimes. They're so powerful. Plants and animals are more obviously conscious. Before we get launched into it, it says, for the noumenal essences, and I just want to qualify the term noumenal. It comes from noumenon, which is Greek, and it refers to the true essential nature of being as distinguished from the illusory objects of sense. Now, to get some sort of feeling for this conscious universe, we need to look at some of the core aspects that lie behind it. Now, I know that other speakers and study groups are also looking at these throughout the week, so maybe together we can build up a really good picture of what's going on. So here I want to very briefly give an overall outline of the way that everything interacts and works together. And some of them, they may sound like sweeping statements, but they're main core aspects which we'll go on to examine. There's 5 aspects, 5 things that I'd actually like to look at. Firstly, not only do we live in a conscious universe, the universe is embodied consciousness in a state of beingness. Secondly, an aspect of that is matter, cosmic substance. And it ranges from akasha, which includes the astral light, through to ether, through to denser physical forms. Before the cosmos is manifested, it's called Mula Prakriti, or cosmic root substance. Thirdly, it's energized by cosmic electricity. The Tibetan mystical name for this is Fohat. It's the dynamic energy of cosmic ideation. Fourthly, it's guided by formless arupa, dhyanis, devas, angelic hosts. And everything we do is recorded by the Lipika, the recording Dionis. And fifthly, it's all put into form by the builders, the Rupa Dionis, Devas, angelic forces, ranging from suns and planets at the top end, through to the tiny elementals that build the physical world at the lower end. Firstly then, the universe is embodied consciousness. And now the basic foundation of universal consciousness is outlined in the proem, in the three fundamental propositions, especially the first one, and I know in David's study groups and his talks we're looking at this also. So, what underlies everything? An omnipresent, eternal, boundless and immutable principle on which all speculation is impossible, since it transcends the power of human conception and could only be dwarfed by any human expression or similitude. It is beyond the range and reach of thought, in the words of Mandukya, unthinkable and unspeakable. It's the one absolute reality which antecedes all manifested conditioned being. And this infinite and eternal cause is the rootless root of all that was, is, or ever shall be. It is, of course, devoid of all attributes and is essentially without any relation to manifested finite being. It is beingness rather than being, and is beyond all thought or speculation. So to try and get any sense of the sense of being, we have to take a step back into the contemplative. Try and contemplate inside ourselves, just to get a feel for this. But even then, we're starting to fall into images. And that's the illusory way that us humans think about things, about Maya or illusion. Now, the two aspects with this, and I'm looking at this in conjunction with the comments made on page 130, book 1 of the Secret Doctrine. That the universe is embodied consciousness, and its first aspect is absolute abstract space. And on that page, in fact, it gives a good, it elucidates even further by putting it, HPB talks about the planes that these things are on. Now, the first aspect, the absolute abstract space, she says, is on the unreachable plane of absoluteness and infinity, on which no speculation is possible, because it can neither emanate nor be divided, as it is eternal, absolute, and immutable. Now, the second aspect, absolute abstract motion, representing unconditioned consciousness, this is on the plane of emanations. It's like one step removed. This plane of emanations, it is a reflection of the first one, and it can do all this. This is where the things start to happen. On this plane, it can emanate or divide. As I say, it's a place where things do start to happen. It is the one life, eternal, invisible, yet omnipresent, without beginning or end. Unconscious, yet absolute consciousness. Unrealizable, yet the one self-existing reality. On page 2 of the Secret Doctrine, she elucidates further. It's one attribute, which is itself. Eternal, ceaseless motion is called in esoteric parlance the great breath, which is the perpetual motion of the universe in the sense of limitless, ever-present space. Now, which is motionless cannot be divine, but then there is nothing in fact. Then there is nothing in fact and reality absolutely motionless in the universal soul. So then we have the unrevealed deity, universal motion, the thrill of the creative breath in nature, going by various names, Parabrahm, the one reality, the absolute. I mean, there are other labels for them. We can split them into spirit, consciousness, and matter. Pre-cosmic ideation, the spirit and consciousness part of it, is the very basis of thought. It's the origin and root of force and all individual consciousness, and supplies the guiding intelligence of the vast scheme of cosmic evolution, i.e. it's the thought behind everything. On the other hand, pre-cosmic root substance, Malaprakriti, is that aspect of the absolute which underlies all the objective planes of nature. It's pre-matter before it's actually coalesced into matter. She says, just as pre-cosmic ideation is the root of all individual consciousness, so pre-cosmic substance is the substratum of matter in the various grades of differentiation. HPB puts it another way when talking about consciousness, and this is taken from the collected writings. And it shows what subtle layers we're talking about when considering this subject. To give the merest outline of the states of consciousness, she writes, is the most difficult thing in the world, since the universe is embodied consciousness, and a knowledge of the states of consciousness means a knowledge of the planes of the universe, and of all correspondences in the cosmos, solar system, and man. She then explains that any study of consciousness can only be confined to that manifesting in the solar system. And she says that even the lowest plane of cosmos transcends the highest adept on earth. So even the masters say that they don't know what happens outside our solar system. And when she's talking about this, she says about the lowest plane of cosmos, she spells it with a K. And a note here about cosmos with a K. Cosmos with a K means a manvantaric or great age, manifesting as a whole. In modern scientific parlance, the newest theory is the Big Bang. So it's the Big Bang expanding, creating the universe, and then back again. On page 3 of the poem, she equates the cosmos with the noumenon, saying it has nothing to do with the causal relations of the phenomenal world. It's back to the essential, or the force which is the essence. Now, in the Secret Doctrine, when she uses the term cosmic with a C, this implies to the phenomena of the solar system, as does the term universe when she uses it. So back to the states of consciousness then. In the collected writings, around this time she does publish a diagram, but that's another thing again. But the comment referring to it is an important reminder of the way that we must treat all diagrams, pictorial representations, or definitions. And I mean, even something like this, I've sort of labelled it all as sort of like basic bones, and I like to have everything rigidly defined. And sometimes I get quite exasperated when she refers to something in one part of the Secret Doctrine, and then a bit further on seems to give it a different definition, and this is happening all the time. So it's a timely reminder to contemplate on this information and let the inner tuition guide. You've got to just sort of try and contemplate on it and feel your way through it. She says, now it must always be borne in mind that diagrams can only show one aspect of truth, and that they're only meant to help the student to an apprehension of the aspect symbolised. Let us remember we are dealing with forces and states of consciousness, and not with watertight compartments. So, to come back to pre-cosmic ideation as the root of consciousness and pre-cosmic matter as a substratum of the material world. There are a couple of major aspects to both of these, which we tend to label with the Sanskrit or the Tibetan terms, purely because there aren't the English words to describe them easily, and that is Akasha and Fohat. We're just going to have a look at these two aspects. So, Akasha then, matter, it's cosmic substance. It ranges from Akasha, the astral light in its high vibration, to the ether in its lowest, through denser physical forms. Fohat is cosmic electricity. It's a Tibetan mystical name, and it means basically the dynamic energy of the cosmic ideation. Now, first we'll have a look at matter, Akasha. And remember the opening comments about everything, even stones, being conscious out there. I mean, everything out there is almost fizzing. It's full of life. The air around us is full of energy. She says, it's been stated before now that occultism does not accept anything inorganic in the cosmos. The expression employed by science, inorganic substance, means simply that the latent life slumbering in the molecules of so-called inert matter is incognizable. All is life, and every atom of even mineral dust is a life, though beyond our comprehension and perception, because it's outside the range of laws known to those who reject occultism. And there we have it, those who reject occultism, that's what we're up against. And it's the scientists, it's the materialist worldview. And that was in Victorian times. Now the materialist worldview is virtually totally dominant in the West. So this all is life, and every atom of even mineral dust is a life. She also says that incandescent cosmic dust, it follows magnetically as the iron filings follow the magnet, directing thought of the cosmic forces. Yet this cosmic dust is something more, for every atom in the universe has the potentiality of self-consciousness in it, and it is a universe in itself and for itself. It is an atom and an angel. It's got this huge potential. It's living. So the incandescent cosmic dust not only has life as opposed to being inert, but it also has consciousness. And Akasha is the medium that everything is held in and has many levels. Judith Tyberg, in her book, The Sanskrit Keys to the Wisdom Religion, tells us Akasha is the fifth cosmic element, the element above, or rather within, the other elements of water, air and fire. It's derived from the root verb cast to shine, hence the shining substance. Akasha is primordial spatial substance with a subtle supersensuous nature, and it pervades all things. It has 7 levels, as everything else in the Secret Doctrine and all the HPB's writings. It has 7 levels. Now, they're divided by 7. But remember those watertight compartments. It's a gradated scale. It's not there is a definite dividing line. The whole lot sort of merges into the parts. The top level, the finest vibration, is the astral light. The bottom level is ether, although in other systems the bottom level is actually the physical. So again, it's just a way of dividing it up. So talking about the astral light, the Lipika, the divine recorders impress on to us the invisible tablets of the astral light, the great picture gallery of eternity. And that's a faithful record of every act, and even thought of man, of all that was, is, or ever will be in the phenomenal universe. And not only the higher thoughts of man, but it's also the tablet of memory of the earth and of the animal man. There's a couple of interesting points connected with this. HPB tells us somewhere that when a man loves all things, as did the Buddha, he surrounds himself with akashic substance, which becomes a protective shield which no malevolent influences can penetrate. I will be coming back to this later. But HPB also makes a very interesting comment about horoscopy and horoscopes and this sort of thing. And she says, connected as the Lipika are with the destiny of every man and the birth of every child, whose life is already traced in the astral light, not fatalistically, but only because the future, like the past, is ever alive in the present, they may also be said to exercise an influence on the science of horoscopy. So what we're doing now is laying down the future. A lower level, or the lowest level of Akasha, is ether. As I said earlier, occult science recognises 7 cosmical elements, 4 entirely physical, that's the earth, water, air and fire, as we heard earlier, and the 5th is ether. This is semi-material, and again this is to actually quote HPB. It's semi-material, and the 5th, as it will become visible in the air towards the end of our 4th round, to reign supreme over the others during the whole of the 5th. The remaining 2 are as yet absolutely beyond the range of human perception. So we are in the 4th round at the moment, and as we become more spiritual, then we should start to see ether. It says it's going to become visible in the air towards the end of our 4th round. Now, I wonder whether sometimes it's visible now, and I wonder how many of you can sometimes see sparks in the sky. You look up sometimes and there's lots of sort of dancing sparks, or sometimes round there's basically in the sky, especially a patch of clear blue sky, and contemplate, take yourself down to a receptive level, and you can see them. It's absolutely amazing. And I'm sure I've talked to quite a lot of people, and I know lots of people that can see it, and they've actually started to see it. So I think that this is this etheric level starting to become visible. It's variously described, I think by orgone. That's orgone by Wilhelm Reich. It could be prana. It could be the etheric aura of the earth. Right. So now I'd like to move on to the cosmic electricity, Fohat. The third aspect of this talk on conscious universe is that it's energized by cosmic electricity. In Theosophy, we give it the Tibetan mystical name of Fohat, the dynamic energy of cosmic ideation. It's cosmic life or vitality, and it's a fantastically powerful concept that everything of a vibrant electrical nature throughout the universe is full of, governed by Fohat. It is through Fohat that the ideas of the universal mind are impressed upon matter. HPB tells us, some faint idea of the nature of Fohat may be gathered from the appellation cosmic electricity, sometimes applied to it. But the commonly known properties of electricity must in this case be added, but to it must be added others, including intelligence. She tells us Fohat is in reality everywhere. It runs like a thread through all and has its own 7 divisions, each with its 7 subdivisions. She says the Fohatic consciousness is a state of consciousness everywhere. On a universal level, it's variously described as an emanation or the combined concentration of the Dhyani Buddhas, the messenger of their will. It has a huge range of attributes. On the cosmic plane, it's behind such manifestations as light, heat, sound, adhesion, etc. And is the spirit of electricity, which is the life of the universe. She tells us the agitation of the Fohatic forces at the 2 cold ends, the north and south pole of the earth, which result in multicoloured radiance at night, have in them several of the properties of Akasha ether, as well as sound. So it's a combination of the two. These are the aurora borealis and the aurora australis, both of which take place at the very centres of terrestrial and magnetic forces. She says the 2 poles are said to be the storehouses, the receptacles and liberators at the same time of cosmic and terrestrial vitality, electricity, from the surplus of which the earth, had it not been for these 2 natural safety valves, would have been rent to pieces long ago. Well, we've got nowadays slightly different way of looking at it, but it's more or less the same. And bear in mind that this was written many, many years before the scientists discovered the Earth's magnetic field and the importance of that field in protecting us from the sun's magnetism. And she's right, she's writing this, 120 years before we know enough to make these diagrams of the huge forces that are coming up through the poles. Also, talking about Fohat, when the universe is being made, the cosmic dust is directed and coagulates by means of cosmic force. And once again, it says, like iron filings follow the magnet. The forms are created. I'm sure you've probably all done that experiment at school of putting iron filings on a piece of paper and then a magnet and seeing the forms of the iron filings. And this is the way that the basic magnetism attracts and coalesces the material forms around it. Fohat is nearly personified. He's often referred to as he. And we're told that Fohat hardens and scatters the 7 brothers, which means the primordial electric entity for the Eastern occultists. For the Eastern occultists insist that electricity is an entity. He electrifies them into life and separates primordial stuff or pre-genetic matter into atoms, themselves the source of all life and consciousness. It's put poetically, Fohat is the steed and thought is the rider, i.e. he's under the influence of the guiding thought of the Dhyani Buddhas, the top Dhyanis. He passes like lightning through the fiery clouds, the cosmic mists. He lifts his voice and calls the innumerable sparks, atoms, and joins them together. And here we have a description of the creation of suns and planets. I mean, I never knew there was so much dust in space. At school I was taught that space was a vacuum. But now we're sent amazing pictures of the formation of stars from the Hubble telescope. It's Fohat in action. And this is the birth of a star system, birth of suns in the cosmic dusts, courtesy of Hubble. The ancients represented this force by a serpent. They say, Fohat hisses as he glides hither and thither in zigzags. Fohat in its various manifestations is the mysterious link between mind and matter, the animating principle electrifying every atom into life. It's not only on a universal scale, but it's on the atomic level as well, including the electrical impulses of our bodies and brains. It's on all levels of our being. Again, of interest to note that modern science has come to the conclusion that all cerebration and brain activity, says HBB in 1887, are attended by electrical phenomena. Now, how many years is it that we've actually been measuring the electrical impulses in our neural networks? I said at the beginning of the universe that the universe is embodied consciousness, in which there's matter, cosmic substance, and that's activated into life by Fohatic energy. So then let's have a quick look at the angelic or Davic aspects of the conscious universe. It's guided by the arupa, that is no form, formless, dhyanis, devas, angelic forces, and recorded, as I said earlier, by the lipika, from lipi to write. It's put into form by the builders, the rupa, the devas with form, from suns and planets at the top end through to the tiny elementals who build the physical world, including us at the lower end. I've already said something about the lipika, who impress onto the tablets of the astral light everything that we do or think. And they are one of the top sets of angelic beings, the dhyanis. In fact, the whole universe, with its various forces, can be seen in terms of divine beings. It's just another way of describing it. Forces, or dhyanis, angels. Mahayana Buddhism, in its system, although there are many depictions of the various dhyani Buddhas and lots of personifications of them, it's at its core defines dhyani Buddhas as essentially metaphysical essences. And this is really what we've got to remember. HPB uses many of these labels in different languages, interchanging them throughout her writings. For example, we have the forces described as, it's the omnipresent, eternal, boundless and immutable principle. The second aspect on the plane of emanations, the Logos, the Verbum, Divine Christos, Avalokiteshvara. This emanates from itself the seven rays, also described as Dhyan Chohans or Dhyani Buddhas. And this is on the top level. These angelic hosts equate to the Christian archangels, or the 5 Hindu Panchasayam, or Brahmas, the creators. And then we have a much more poetic description of it. Same thing, but totally different type of language. That's in stanza 3, sloka 7, where she describes the actual stanza of Zan says that there emerges from the depths of the great dark waters, or Father Mother of the gods, the blazing divine dragon of wisdom, also the Logos, the Verbum, etc., who contains in himself the 7 creative hosts. And they're also described as the first 7 breaths of the dragon of wisdom. So there's this all these sort of different ways of describing these forces. Coming back to Akasha, this very top level Dhyani Buddhas produce in their turn from their holy circumgyrating breaths the fiery whirlwind, and this is the incandescent cosmic dust that's whipped into shape by Fohat. And again, this it is a huge dust cloud with suns and planets forming in it. The Lipika are the second set of top Dayan Chohans, who stand parallel with the 7 angels of the presence. It's another change in description. They stand parallel or could be seen as the same but a different aspect of them. Because it's they, the Lipika, who project into objectivity from the passive universal mind the ideal plan of the universe, and that upon which the builders reconstruct the cosmos after every pralaya. Because she tells us the whole cosmos is guided, controlled and animated by almost endless series of hierarchies or sentient beings, each having a mission to perform, and who, whether we give them one name or another and call them Dayan Chohans or angels, are messengers in the sense only that they are the agents of karmic and cosmic laws. They vary infinitely in their respective degrees of consciousness and intelligence. And that is a Christian-based way of seeing them, sort of a rather nice drawing by Botticelli. We've got the Divine Trinity up at the top, and then we've got these lovely cascading drawings of angels, and they're all different, beautifully sort of delineated, and they've all got expressions on their little faces. So again, it's I think one of my favourite pictures of the hierarchies. All of these things, angelic hierarchies, Akasha, Fohat, descend from the higher vibrational rates to the lower rates in subdivisions of 7, just subdivided by 7. And bearing in mind the comment earlier about these descriptions not being in watertight compartments, we should really not think about the way that things are definitely drawn, but remember that the whole cosmos is on a sliding scale. The divisions overlap or blend into each other. Because HPB describes how the hosts of the Dhyani Buddhas evolve a lower set of Dhyani Buddhas, and these Dhyani Buddhas a third, and so on. She says there's 7 of them, and after that they begin to be Cosmocratores, the builders. She says call them whatever names you like, they've all got special names in the Sanskrit. And then the builders of the astral light. She says it's an endless hierarchy of one kind of Dhyanis evoluting another kind of Dhyanis. Every one becomes more consolidated, more material, until it comes to the builders of this universe. So, how relevant is all this to us, to how we see and react with the universe? Now, our life's objective, we're told, is to further our spiritual journey towards our becoming as the Mahatmas are. And that's at the basis of it, outlined by Peter yesterday. Now, obviously, we're all affected by these amazing forces, but we're not usually aware of any of this. We've grown up with, in our physical bodies, we're used to seeing the world in a specific way, that you know, from us, and there's the world out there, and it's all physical. We've taken these forces, amazing forces that we can't see, for granted. We don't realise that they're there. But learning about Akasha, Fohat and the Devic forces all helps us to realise that we're all energy beings. We're a mass of vibrating molecules, and each of those molecules has life. And there we are. Also, thanks to Barbara Brennan, Hands of Light. That's a picture of an aura that's published actually in that book. I know Peter mentioned her yesterday, and the Barbara Brennan book. So just consider for a moment the vibrational field that we each have round us, our auras, extending beyond the confines, well beyond the confines of our physical body, and we each have them. And once we become conscious of this, there's a huge shift in attitude. And also we've got to remember that this field around us is not emitted. It doesn't come out of our physical bodies like a light out of a light bulb. We are the energy field. We're that energy field with denser layers as we get nearer the body, until finally the physical is the densest part. It's the densest that encases the central part. And realization of this leads to, I think, increased sensitivity and increased awareness. It means energies received, that we can feel things very subtly through our auras, through that outer membrane, and it's mentioned in the voice of the silence. The whole concept there about merging into one sense, thy senses. That sense alone which lies concealed within the hollow of thy brain. And in the aura, our outer skin, as it were, it's just the membrane between our personal energy and the energy that's out there. That is our outer sense organ. And the hollow of the brain is the nucleus within that. So we are able to feel through that. And by contemplating on that, we can put ourselves in touch with the voice of the silence. But energy's out, energy's emitted. And I feel we must have a sense of responsibility about the energies and thoughts that we send out, as they are very definite things. She said, the first letter of K.H. to Hume, dated 1880, and he says, "Every thought of man, upon being evolved, passes into the inner world and becomes an active entity by associating itself, coalescing, we might term it, with an elemental. That is to say, with one of the semi-intelligent forces of the kingdoms. It survives as an active intelligence, a creature of the mind's begetting, for a longer or shorter period, proportionate to the original intensity of the cerebral action which generated it. Thus, a good thought is perpetuated as an active, beneficent power, an evil one as a maleficent demon, and so man is continually peopling his current in space with a world of his own, crowded with the offspring of his fancies, desires, impulses and passions, a current which reacts upon any sensitive or nervous organisation which comes into contact with it in proportion to its dynamic intensity." So we're building thought forms all the time. HPB could feel negative thoughts coming to her. Countess Watchmeister tells us in her little book Reminiscences of H.P. Blavatsky and the Sacred Doctrine, how, and quote, "HPB said to me one evening, 'You cannot imagine what it's like to feel so many adverse thoughts and currents directed against you. It's like the prickings of 1,000 needles, and I have to be continually erecting a wall of protection around me.'" So a wall of protection, or one can send out light, because the vibratory quality of the different kinds of light held in akasha, of them bright white light vibrations can always turn away darker, disruptive emanations. And also remember what I said earlier about the Buddha, and that when a man loves all things, as did the Buddha, he surrounds himself with akashic substance, which becomes a protective shield, which no malevolent influences can penetrate. Again, HPB had to surround herself with such a wall. So it's on the vibrational wavelength. And don't forget also that everything is recorded on the tablets of the astral light by the Lipika. I mean, Akasha gives a whole new meaning to the term the World Wide Web. For this medium is here, all around us. It's permeating us. It's almost humming all the time. It's full of life. HPB and the Masters, all the higher beings, us if we want, are in constant communication through it. And this is partly how the secret doctrine was written. Countess Watchmeister walked into HPB's writing room to find the floor strewn with sheets of discarded writing. And there's HPB sitting in the middle of it, complaining. She says, "I've written this page out 12 times, and each time Master says it's wrong." So Countess brought her a cup of coffee, and an hour later HPB called through to say, "Yes, I've done it. It's completed to satisfaction." So sat down, and Countess Watchmeister perched herself on the arm of the chair that HPB was in, and she asked how she could make mistakes in setting down what was given to her. And HPB said, "Well, you see, what I do is this. I make what I can only describe as a sort of vacuum in the air before me, and fix my sight and my will upon it, and soon scene after scene passes before me like the successive pictures of a diorama. Or, if I need a reference or information from some book, I fix my mind intently, and the astral counterpart of the book appears, and I take from it what I need." I mean, she begins the proem of the secret doctrine with the words, "Pages from a prehistoric period. An archaic manuscript, a collection of palm leaves made impermeable to water, fire and air by some specific process unknown," she says, "is before the writer's eye." These are the stanzas of Zan seen in her mind's eye, and there's been a lot of controversy over the past 120 years or so about their authenticity and whether these stanzas exist on the physical plane somewhere. So she definitely didn't have them in material form in front of her. Now, sometimes thoughts or mental messages just come through direct. Master K.H. recounts in the Mahatma Letters how travelling back after personally visiting his chief, as he calls him, the head of his order, to discuss an aspect of the Theosophical Society matters, he's crossing back over to Ladakh on his way home, and he's coming through the Karakoram range when he sees an avalanche come tumbling down. And he writes, "But just as I was taking advantage of the awful stillness," sort of awesome, I guess we'd use these days, "the awful stillness which usually follows such cataclysm, and to get a clearer view of the present situation, I was rudely recalled to my senses. A familiar voice, as shrill as the one as attributed to Saraswati's peacock, shouted along the currents, 'Olcott has raised the very devil again. The Englishmen are going crazy. Kudhumi, come quickly and help me.' In her excitement, she forgot she was speaking English. I must say that the old lady's telegrams do strike one like stones from a catapult." That's letter number 2 received in Simla, 1880. But how many times have we suddenly thought about someone that we haven't seen or heard of for some time, and the phone goes and there's that person on the other end of the line? So the vibrations are going through the Akashic web, and it's happening all the time. These things come through on a physical level. Colonel Olcott recalls how, I think it was on the Shannon in the middle of the ocean, after he'd just had a gripe and a moan about HPB. On this steamer in the middle of the ocean, he went to his cabin where a letter materialised and fell from the ceiling. And it's from KH, giving a bit of a telling off about having bad thoughts about her. So, they're all listening in. Countess Watchmeister comments about her time with HBB during the writing of The Secret Doctrine. She says, living in this atmosphere and coming into contact so continually with these, usually unseen forces, this all seemed to be the true reality to me, and the outer world was that which appeared vague and unsatisfactory. And finally, to end with, another example of how these energies come through. And this time it's the conscious universe making itself known through a cuckoo clock. Countess Watchmeister writes, HBB had, however, a distraction of rather a peculiar nature. In front of her writing table attached to the wall was a cuckoo clock, and this used to behave in a very extraordinary manner. Sometimes it would strike like a loud gong and then sigh and groan as if possessed, cuckooing in the most unexpected way. Our maid, Louise, who was the most dense and apathetic of mortals, was very much afraid of it and told us solemnly one day that she thought the devil was in it. Not that I believe in the devil, she said, but this cuckoo clock almost speaks to me at times. And so it did. Countess Watchmeister relates how one evening I went into the room and saw what appeared to me like streams of electric light coming out of the clock in all directions. On telling HBB, she replied, "Oh, it's only the spiritual telegraph. They're laying it on stronger tonight on account of tomorrow's work." Thank you.